So welcome to part 2 of the first painting, and now I'm going to go and paint in a little bit of the background. So I need just intuitively want a little bit more contrast on this page, and I'm using Prussian blue impasto paint, and I'm just going to paint some of the background back. So I'm using this flat brush that's actually very fine. You'll see in a second what I mean. When I turn it sideways, you can see how fine it is. And I love these little brushes. So I have a whole bunch of them. A little tip here: if you buy acrylic paint brushes or any paint brushes for acrylic paint, don't buy the most expensive paint brushes, because in the end acrylic paint is heavy on brushes, and they do harden sometimes, and you know what, I'll rather have a big quantity of brushes than have the best quality. But that's just a personal preference. I mix in a little bit of Prussian blue and hooker's green, and I'm going to use them intermittently. So this is just Prussian blue again. I love the heavy body paints just for this reason, because when you want to put down a little bit of impasto, it's easy to do. Because of the consistency of the paint, it keeps its form. So if I put a paint blob down, then it will stay there, which is awesome. Okay, again, small brush and lots of little paint strokes. I'm actually used to painting big paintings. Like, my favorite size is 48 by 36 inches. But when I did the planning for this paint class, I thought to myself, it's going to be so hard to paint on small canvases. And guess what? I think I fell in love with painting on small canvases. So for me, bigger, I realized, and again, it's something I would never have known had I not done it, that bigger is not always necessarily better. So just using a little bit of dry brush. I love now I'm just going to zoom in. I want to show you a little bit more of the combination of using impasto paint with wash, and we'll get there in a moment, right? But right now I'm just filling in all those little white spaces, and you can see I am leaving tiny parts of white like lines just to define the edges of the flowers. I'm not painting over everything. So when you get to this stage of the painting, and for the next 18 minutes, I'm including the whole second half of this painting into this statement, it becomes a very meditative exercise, because most of the decisions has been made on the canvas, and now you can just start enjoying the detailed process. So I've painted with thick impasto in between the leaves, and now on the edges I'm going to paint with a watered down version. So I'm just using a wet brush and I'm working into the paint and just bringing it out, right? So when you have a wet canvas and you add impasto paint to it, it gives a very interesting texture. So I'll show you that in a second, and it will be on the left side of the painting. So this is more of a wash or more a transparent type of paint that I'm using this, and then I'm blending it in with a wet brush. So I'm stealing a little bit of paint there, and then just painting in between the leaves with a wet brush And then, so you know what? Let's just talk about the color palette for a second. And this is a very personal choice. And you might find that when you start painting your paintings that you desire a different color palette. And guess what I'm going to say? That's going to be okay. So there's no right or wrong in art. There's no right or wrong way to apply acrylic paint, and to approach any kind of art project. There's no right or wrong. There's no book that will tell you you're not allowed to do that. The interesting thing, because it's such a subjective field, there's no rules really. Honestly, maybe there's rules for certain types of painting, like if you are a super realist, there might be rules. And the rules might just be there to make things easier, right? But for instance, if you, I think the only rule of any type of artistic project is that it will withstand the test of time. So that's why it's important to prime your canvas so that the paint, really you give the paint the best chance of lasting a very long time on the canvas. It's the same in scrapbooking as well. You know, the only rule really is to make sure that it's archive quality so that you don't get that yellowing effect. Okay, so you'll figure out fairly quickly what colors you love, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. I'm just showing you one way to do it, and this is just the way that I prefer, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. So I just needed to say that. At some points I'll probably say it again in a different way, but art is so subjective and it's so personal, and everyone develops in their own way and in their own time. And really, you should just think of this class as one arrow in your quiver, on your artistic journey. I really love learning from different teachers because every single person brings something different to the table, and it just enhances your artistic endeavor. Maybe that's the best way to put it. I can carry on this trend for a long time because there's so much to say about the artistic process and how everything that you do works towards a better outcome. That's the best way I can say it. So just so you know, if I were an art teacher, if I had an art school, which I almost have, just virtually, right? The one thing that I would really say to my students is make as many art journaling pages as you possibly can. Art journaling is probably the best exercise in creativity that you can do for yourself. So if you are very, very frustrated, if you've started one of these paintings and you're very frustrated, then I would really suggest you go back to art journaling and maybe take my class. I have 2 classes on art journaling, and just go back and do the process and go through every stage of the art journaling journey. And that is like drawing. Like when we were in university, we had to draw so much. Like we were sick of drawing. And the rule is just the more you draw, the better you become at every other thing. It's like ballet. That is the basics of dance. The dance form, ballet is the basics, and that's drawing is the basics. And for me, art journaling here is the basics of this creative process. It's invaluable. I can't begin to tell you how much it helps me. And I still art journal lots, and every time I art journals my paintings becomes better, and the more I paint, the better my art journals become. So it's this mutually beneficent process. So this is just this is just deep violet ink, acrylic ink, and you can see how I used the dripper right out of the bottle just to draw on the painting those little berries at the top. And now I'm just filling in the purple protea a little bit, because this flower has purple edges, almost black edges, you know, so it's going to be a process just to paint that one. I love using the paint drippers right out of the bottle. It just puts that pure acrylic ink, and again, it's a little bit transparent, so it's not totally opaque, which makes it perfect for what we use it for. I love this painting, and I actually went to Michael's the other day to look at frames, and you can buy a 16 by 20, like a decorative frame that can go around these paintings. You can just slide the canvas in, and I think this painting will look so beautiful if it's framed in a thick gilded gold frame. The last few minutes of this painting, I'm just going to paint back some details. So I'm using white acrylic ink, and I'm going to and you can see I'm using those little paper cups. I love using paper plates and paper cups for canvases, palettes, because you can just throw it away, and for me that just works great. Otherwise everything is full of paint, and I don't have a big sink in my home where I can just clean paint to my heart's content and make messes like we used to have in university. So I just prefer to keep the messes to a minimum, and that's why the paper plates work for me. I would say get maybe a better quality paper plate so that when you paint, the paint doesn't seep into the paper plate, so. Okay, so now I'm painting details. And again, I would refer to, just the images that I'm looking at for the different flowers to get an inspiration to add more details to my flowers. And while I'm painting, just for a few minutes, just to give you a rest from my voice, I will just play you a little bit of music so that you can just relax and just look at the process. I think it's very self-explanatory. I will be leaving a button at the end of every lesson on the website where you can just click and email me. So if you have any questions, click it and email me your question. And what I'll do is, if I get questions, like 3 or 4 people ask me the same question, what I will do is I will maybe make an additional video. So because I realized something, that this is so new, this whole thing teaching painting is new, and I know there will be things that I don't know, that I might be able to explain better, but I don't know that yet, right? So I need you to ask me if something is unclear. If you have any question, doesn't matter how silly it seems, just email me, and I would be so happy to answer your question. Maybe put in the subject matter of the email something like paint class question, so that I know in between all my emails that I get that this is something specific I need to address. And and I will answer you, and if enough people ask the same question, I will definitely make additional videos. So that's just one little thing that I want. I really want you to have a phenomenal experience with this class. So help me make it better for you. And if there's anything I can do, I will. Okay? So just know you have a very dedicated teacher here, and I want you to make beautiful paintings. So now I'm mixing green, yellow, and white, and again, just to doodle. Very small paintbrush, and I'm just bringing back details. And this is honestly my favorite part of the painting, and you will see the top of my head here and there, and it's just because it's hard to hide, and I want to show you everything, but I have to see what I'm doing, right? So that's why. So I think just this painting alone have taught you so many techniques, right? Because we did acrylic paints in impasto, and we did washes with acrylic paints, and we did layers with acrylic paints. We did details and then big areas. And honestly, I think the value of this class is it's fun to watch the videos, but the true value is when you go out and you buy the paint and you buy the canvas and you start drawing on your canvas and you start, just making with me. Then you will really experience the value of the painting class. And you know what? If this class go well and people love it, then I'll definitely do more. I would love to do a watercolor class as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's 5 more lessons ahead. Okay, so the last few minutes of this class, I'm using parchment color paint, and I'm just going to fill in between those little markings of the protea. So what I'm doing is, it looks just a little bit too much like a drawing, and I just wanted to make it more like a painting. So I'm just painting in between the little markings, and I'm just probably going to cover a few up, but that's fine. Parchment is one of my favorite colors. I love the color parchment. It's just this beautiful off-white. It's not quite gray, it's not quite beige. It's just a beautiful fresh color, right? So I just love painting with it. So I'm just going in between the markings and just just covering it up a little bit. And then I'm just changing my paintbrush for a smaller one. You can't have enough little paintbrushes, so that's probably one thing that I'll tell you a few times. And mine is not expensive at all. I just bought a pack of small brushes from Michael's, and they just sit in a container on my desk, and I just take one. I don't even care which one, and I paint and I put it in the water, and then after 20 minutes or 30 minutes I just go and rinse my containers. So that's just how I'm doing it. You can see I'm using a little bit of impasto on this protea, and that's just for texture. I love the variety of markings. So one thing that I learned when I studied art, I remember one thing very clearly, and that is that my professor said to me, if you were to cut a little square out of a paper, like a letter-sized paper in the middle, and you hold it over your painting, it should be a painting in itself. So every square inch of this painting should be a little painting in itself. And that's actually a very interesting way of thinking of what you're doing. So you're creating so much variety, so much texture, so much interesting parts on your painting that any square inch can be a painting in itself. So keep that in mind when you paint. I'm just mixing in a little bit of the green with the white, and now I'm just going to paint my background at the bottom. So what I'm doing, and it's titanium white that I'm using, I just want to give it a little bit of a finished look. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm not painting away the drippings, but I'm just painting over it, and it will just give it a little bit more of a just a finished look. So I do this with all the paintings, and you'll see how I would just use a little bit of the parchment and then just white. Sometimes you can use a different color, like a light green. I do that in some of the paintings, but it's just to finish it off. You can also see that I didn't write on these paintings, and there's only one painting in this whole series that I actually write on, and that is just because this is hard to duplicate. My handwriting, maybe in future classes we can explore a little bit more of that, but I just wanted to teach a painting where you can just paint and not worry about texture or text. But the second last painting in this series, we will do a little bit of writing, and if it's easy duplicatable, then sure, I can do more. I was also thinking of maybe one day doing a class on big paintings, but of course I'm always thinking, always dreaming of ways to just share and pay it forward and just love on you with paintings. So I'm also going to just do a few splatters, and you'll see it in a moment. Just wet your brush really well. So I'm rinsing the brush really well, and now I'm just going to splatter with a little bit of paint, I think. Yeah, so and that's the other thing. If you feel you've painted too much, you just use a baby wipe while the paint is still a little wet, and you just wipe it away. That is the beauty of wet acrylic paint. And then lastly, you can varnish your painting with a little gloss varnish that you dilute with water, and this is awesome. I don't show it in the paintings, but you can absolutely do it. And when I paint paintings for people, I always varnish it. One or two layers of varnish, and just whitewashing. There, just over my finger, just tapping the brush, just making little splatters. Just a few, and that's it. The trick is to stop while you're ahead. And I'm just wiping it again. So next up, we're going to make the second painting, which is this beautiful flower pot, and with the purples. And it's also one of my absolute favorite paintings, and it's just a little bit of a different approach with the vase and everything, and I'm going to show you this painting from the blank canvas, so you're going to see me draw the painting on it, and I'm very excited to show you the whole process. So thank you for watching this first lesson. Bye.